Welcome back to Shock's Talks. I'm Shakti, and this is my Anomalous study hall. I'm really glad you're here with me today. I'm going to be sharing a new book that I'm just starting, and if you want to, you can get a copy and read along so that when I do my book report episode, we all have things to contribute in the comments. Last episode was about the work of Dr. Joanna Kujawa, and I was delighted to see that she actually commented on that episode. This is the second time that someone who I've talked about has commented. The first was Jeffrey Nusatelli. And I find this not only flattering but affirming. It helps me to feel grounded in what I'm doing, and it gives me the motivation to keep going. Even though the channel is small, I really appreciate all of you that are here. This is such a cool thing to be doing together, just learning and experimenting and digging into UFO history, anomalous studies, psi, and consciousness. And I just love having a reason to continue reading and researching. I've also realized over the 2 years that I've been making this channel, and I knew it when I started, but it's becoming more and more clear that making this work is a part of my process of understanding some of my own anomalous history. And that's exactly what Niara, Terela, Isley is doing in this book. This is Facing the Shadow, Embracing the Light, a journey of spirit retrieval and awakening. Now, this book was something that I heard Richard Dolan talking about. And when Richard Dolan recommends a book, I'm listening. The last time I took his recommendation on a kind of less well-known story, it was Dan Sherman, and the book was Above Black. And I read that book years ago, did an episode on it, and then just recently Jesse Michaels picked it up and actually had an interview with Dan Sherman that was very interesting, and it was so cool to see who this person was and learn more about his story. The reason I'm bringing that up is because there is a lot going on surface level reality. You know, we had Obama talking about aliens, we had Trump talking about aliens. The government has bought the domain name alien.gov and aliens.gov, and nobody knows if it's really going to be about like extraterrestrials or if it's about like undocumented aliens. And so there's a lot of like stuff going on the surface, but we also know that, you know, the president is kind of lashing out right now, and there's a war happening right now, and the Epstein files are still kind of just up in the air. Like, what are we doing about this? There's a lot of unrest, there's a lot of agitated energy, and it's a really scary time for a lot of people. And it's easy to get caught up in the surface level story, but there's this deeper truth in history that's been here all along. And in order to be able to move forward and get through this dark time, we have to understand that real history, and we have to hold people accountable. This is a theme of this book just so far. I'm picking this up from the introduction in the first couple chapters, and it's a really important theme for this moment in reality. I also feel like it's very important to continue to uplift women's voices, which I've been doing on this channel. While I look at everyone, I have had a special interest in women who maybe aren't as well known as some of their male counterparts in this field. I'm just going to kind of flip through this book and read you a couple things from the beginning, just to give you a little teaser. First of all, we'll look at the dedication. To those souls who have been harmed by trauma-based mind control, perhaps also further suffering due to the subsequent challenges of trying to heal in a culture that does not want to acknowledge you out of fear of the darker side of our society that you and your trauma represent. Now, this stood out to me just because of everything that's going on with Epstein right now, and this idea that there are so many people who are living these realities that are disconnected from the mainstream reality. They have gone through things that others don't understand, that are constantly getting swept under the rug, and it's really hard for people to believe them, and that lack of understanding adds another layer to the trauma that they already went through. This could be applied to so many different types of really specific traumas, but it absolutely applies to anomalous trauma of any kind. And finally, I dedicate this book to my grown-up children here on earth and to any of my star children who may yet live. May your own awakenings find you all and light your way. And to all of humanity, may you discover who you truly are and realize your fullest potential. So already from this, you can kind of get a taste of where we're going here. There's going to be talk of star seeds and star children and star families. There's going to be talk of anomalous trauma, including trauma-based mind control. And again, this relates to Dan Sherman and Jordan Jozak because more and more people are coming forward and talking about the weird things that happened to them throughout their lives, whether it was children in the GATE programs or adults in military or Air Force programs. You have this common thread of secret trainings and testings going on just below the surface of reality, and through things like hypnosis and also just dream recall and, healing over time, people are starting to uncover some of these strange experiences. And one more person who I heard from recently, who is someone who also was a part of the GATE programs, is Dr. Julia Mossbridge. And this was interesting because she's a consciousness researcher and she's starting to get more and more involved in psi, and she has some very unique perspectives on the matter that are going to be very important in the coming years. So I'll definitely be getting her book soon and reading that on Shocks Talks as well. We're just going to skip around and I'm going to read you a couple passages from the beginning of this book. I wanted to mention this from the foreword. The foreword is by Mary Rodwell and it starts with Apocalypse, a time of revelation or disclosure. There is no question that our beautiful planet Earth is in crisis. The effects of ecological disasters, global warming, wars, and famine are reported daily. Many believe this heralds the apocalypse, a time of revelation or disclosure, and the most profound disclosure, in my opinion, has to be the revelation we are not alone, that our planet has been visited and is still being visited by non-human intelligences. This information is apparent to anyone who sincerely seeks the truth, and yet the majority of humanity is still unaware. This book came out in 2013. The orchestrated cover-up is of such magnitude it is hard to accept it as even possible, a cover-up that can only be understood when one is aware of the profound implications of disclosure. The enormity of the possible changes is encapsulated in a statement from the late Colonel Philip J. Corso, formerly of the U.S. military. Recalling a meeting with an extraterrestrial outside a military base in the USA, Colonel Corso asked this extraterrestrial being, "So, what's in it for us?" The extraterrestrial replied, "A new world, if you can take it." Colonel Philip J. Corso wrote The Day After Roswell, and there's an episode on that in the first season of Shocks Talks. In this foreword, Mary Rodwell also states the truth is stranger than any fiction, and Niara's story is one of these. So of course I had to put it in this season of Shocks Talks, the truth is stranger than fiction. This book is going to go into abductions and MILABS, which is military abductions, a topic that not a whole lot of people talk about, but in this UFO studies kind of world, you hear about it quite a bit. And it's a pretty horrible thing to think about, but it's very important to bring these things to light. To believe what she experienced was real and that her own countrymen could get away with such dreadful abuses of human rights without suffering any legal consequences under the cover of protecting national security, to believe such covert programs kept profound secrets from the elected governments, even their own presidents as well as the public, it is not a picture that the patriot wants to believe or accept. Niara was a patriot until she experienced MILAB abductions and betrayal by her own countrymen. It was deeply traumatic to accept such betrayal occurred and far easier to deny. But having said that, when Niara tried to heal from her pain, she knew the body does not lie, and her body wasn't lying when it was triggered, reawakening these buried traumas. To heal, Niara had to accept the truth. It is so much easier to accept non-humans are the bad guys than to believe the bad guys are your own people, This realization takes Niara to the edge of life. To seek the truth, one needs dedication and focus. So this idea of dedication and focus is really relevant to me because, as I've said before on this channel, I don't talk a whole lot about my own experiences, but I am somewhere in the midst of this type of journey. There are a few chapters in my life, from early in life to later in my early 20s to then again later in my late 20s, where really significant things occurred. And there are mysteries there, and there is missing time, and there is also at the same time a deep inner knowing of something that went on. And I've been on a journey of healing and learning so that I can get to the point of understanding. And that's exactly the kind of arc that Niara is describing in this book. So I'm also reading this for my own healing and hopefully to gain a little more confidence and clarity, and to find that strength to keep moving through these really muddy waters. It's hard to untangle the past and make sense of things that were purposefully obscured. It sometimes just feels like the odds are stacked against us and these things are too big to handle. So when any individual goes through, all the way through that dark tunnel, it's obviously very important to all of us who are also in our own versions of this to take note of their path so that we can find inspiration in that. Niara's non-physical explorations have given her a new perspective to her life and expanded her awareness of both her human and soul journey on this planet. She learns that she is a wanderer, an extraterrestrial soul who chose to incarnate as human. Her mission is to act as a conduit for us to learn about ourselves and to report her experiences to her star family so that they can better understand humanity. I have met a number of starseeds who admit to similar roles, that they are recorders of human behavior and regularly and astrally report this data to their star family. Certainly, if this is the case, it would give our extraterrestrials insight from a human perspective, which must be very valuable as a tool to understanding us. Coupled with recall of her star family, she discovered, difficult as it has been, the purpose of her soul mandate, to expose the truth of our human shadow and to stand up to the powerful and corrupt few who are denying our right to our true heritage, the heritage of all humanity. Okay, so that's all just from the foreword. The prologue begins with this beautiful medicine story, and I'm going to read it to you so that you can get an idea of how we're flowing. There's a structure to this book that is a little more artistic than a lot of these accounts, and I love that. I love it when the individual really expresses themselves as they're telling their story. And so let's go ahead and just listen to this opening, part 1, the experience, prologue. Light the story fires, light the sacred sage and cedar, smell the sweetgrass, be at peace. Join this circle with full hearts, come with open hearts, sit with clear hearts, listen with strong hearts. See me, I am tying my ankle to a stake in the earth, that I may make my stand with courage. I am taking back my power from those who stole it long ago. Hear me. This is my medicine story for the healing of my spirit. This is stone medicine of memory and water medicine of hidden depths. Hear me. This is my prayer to Sky Father, to Earth Mother. This is what happened long ago. This is what has been forgotten and must now be remembered. This is what has been hidden and must now be revealed. Hear me. This is for all people everywhere. Niara, Terela, Isley. This book is a chronicle of my experiences from early childhood up to today, to help me examine the threads of light and dark that are woven throughout my life to help me better understand them. pouring my experiences out here, how I felt about them, tried to cope with them, and at last how I had to face up to all of them, is very much a catharsis that I hope will bring yet a new level of healing. Finally, this book is also meant to educate others about the kinds of things that go on in our country, as a warning to pay attention. At the same time, it's also a call to a collective spiritual awakening that can empower us all to remake the world as we would have it, peaceful, abundant, caring, and cooperative at every level. So I'm always going to get behind a message that is rooted in peace and love and cooperation and harmony, because that's what I'm here for. And this reminds me of Kuyawa's work in the sense that she called herself a spiritual detective, and she was digging around doing this detective work in order to form a more clear perspective that would allow her to move forward through this crazy time in reality in a meaningful way. I feel that Niara is doing her own version of this, and all of us are to some extent who are here in this Anomalous study hall. We're learning because we need to learn. We need to expand in order to be able to move into this next level of whatever it is that humanity is going to be facing on the planet Earth. We feel the ramping up. We feel the changes, and we've been in it for a long time now, but at the very least, the last 80 or so years has been a really pivotal time for humanity in terms of not only the UFO history and what that has done to society, but the ways in which the cover-up that started with crash retrieval programs has expanded into a cover-up of so much more. Hidden science, hidden research, hidden testing, and hidden abuse. And so in order to face this, we have to evolve spiritually because it takes great inner strength. And Niara is an example of that warrior spirit that is rooted in love. And these kinds of examples are extremely valuable when you're on this path of peace. This book is also to educate others about extraterrestrial contact and the common energetic ground in which it can take place. In one sense, contact has been ongoing throughout the ages on this planet. In another sense, it is something we are moving towards in a fuller way, a more open way for all. We need to stand ready to meet our star neighbors as a newly mature species, not as a backward race of children still emotionally out of control. To meet them as equals, not projecting any mistaken godhood upon them. So this idea that the connection between humanity and the non-human intelligences is imminent has been floating around the UFO community for years. But you do hear a lot right now about the Bledsoe prophecy 2026 and this idea of government disclosure might be happening. We know we're not going to get a whole lot from that, whatever that ends up being. But there is a sense that in the community, when it comes to channelers, when it comes to researchers, when it comes to experiencers, there's been this talk for a while that there will come a day when we all know more. There will come a day when we're interfacing more with all of these non-human intelligences. Are we close to that day? I don't really know, but I would like to believe that we are. However, I do see reality as exactly, unfortunately, in the position that Niara describes here back in 2003, was it? Let me double check that. 2013. So back in 2013, she was thinking about us as a backward race of children still emotionally out of control. And if you look at what's going on right now in the world, it really seems to be that side of humanity is showing itself. We can only hope. We can only hope that that is the death rattle. Retired Sergeant Major Robert O'Dean, who I had the privilege and honor of meeting in February 2009, said in a little video I watched online that he feels they will be coming soon and the people are not ready. This book is my gift to help people become ready, stepping fully into my role as an emissary for the star nations of the light as I believe Robert Dean is as well. He, like myself, was a member of the military. He brings a wide spectrum viewpoint to this phenomenon, a spectrum that includes everything from military government cover-ups to humanity's spiritual awakening and expansion of consciousness as a collective. This book will help illuminate the kinds of human rights abuses that go on behind the wall of national security. Now, she goes in to talk about 9/11, the Bush administration, the possibility of that whole thing being an inside job, the horror of that possibility. She talks about elections being bought, and I'm just thinking, wow, things have really continued in that direction and gotten even worse. So this book feels really relevant, and I'm hoping to learn something in here that can apply to the times that we're living through now. She says, I had always believed in the basic goodness of people. However, my memories were showing me such a dark side of humanity, I wanted to reject it. That's kind of going back to what John Mack said about the conscious mind is always going to filter out what the subconscious brings that is not compatible with what is acceptable. So if the conscious mind feels that your memories do not fit consensus reality, it's going to filter that out for you because it says, nope, this has no place here. And that's what she's talking about. So I fought it in myself. In my searching, I met so many conspiracy theory types who were grimly sure of the government hiding things and doing things in secrecy that were harming the public without the public's knowledge. Many of these people were and are deeply angry and resentful at something that loomed far too large for them to exert any control over. There seemed no way to get a larger public, mired down in denial and ridiculing conspiracy theories, to wake up and pay attention to things sometimes right in front of them. This is also just an important observation. It's like we're in a community that is mixed with all kinds of different people. A lot of them have had their own experiences. A lot of them have suffered ridicule, rejection from their own minds even. And then that builds a lot of fear, anger, and resentment. So it's a really messy situation that we're all in, because in order to make meaningful change, we have to heal ourselves. We have to be in a grounded, centered, and heart-centered place. So I've met a lot of people who have been those conspiracy theory types who are really deep in their fear and anger. And what I've found is that it kind of eats away at them like a disease, and you see the holes, you see the damage of that fear. So we have to be really thoughtful about how we heal and process understanding the deeper layers of truth that are not fun to look at. She talks about how she had to suppress the reality that she uncovered through hypnosis for many years and try to be normal and try to live in reality like a normal person. She also talks about how hard it was to talk about it. There was almost like an inner firewall. I spent the next couple of years managing a certain low level of terror, keeping it pressed down so I could still function in my daily life and job, but it was always there. It seemed to say, don't you dare talk about this, don't you dare question or search. For a while, it was almost as if my throat and mouth didn't even want to form the words of telling the memories to someone. As I pushed through that, it got easier to tell it when circumstances required it. Much later, I found the fear to be a certain type of conditioning, like placing a phantom security guard in my own head to keep me quiet. But she had to keep going. She had to find out what was going on. So she went into her research. She also reasoned if there is this big looming dark shadow, it's only because there is an equally huge corresponding light. Jupiter's going to give us some sound effects with his little toy now. She wonders about what the lure is of having power over others, and this is also really relevant to this moment in reality. You hear people talking about like the elites, the billionaires, what's wrong with them, what is the disease of these people, why do they act the way they do. Niara has her own conclusions. She said, I've often wondered what the lure is of having power over others. The only answer I've been able to come up with from my own inner searching is that when one does not perceive or feel their connection to the larger all that is, source, creator, and creation, they will try to get that vital energy from other living beings by having power over them. Instead of an interconnected, conscious, living symbiosis where relationships are mutually beneficial to all cooperating organisms, there exists a host-parasite relationship where those driven by their own inner fear and emptiness must make themselves parasites, controlling and feeding off a host or a host population. Jupiter, what are you doing? What are you doing? You need to play with your loud toy right here. You need to do it right here. Oh my goodness. So in chapter 1, The Shadow and the Light, she sets us up with this little story of a personal parable, People of the Bubble. And I'm going to read you a couple sections from this and then we're going to wrap it up. Once upon a time, there was a whole civilization that lived in a bubble. In this bubble, there pervaded throughout the bubble world a particular reality that operated within a certain set of laws, rules, and morals. Children were born into this reality, and this entire set of information began being transmitted to them almost immediately by their parents and the rest of society in the bubble world. People rarely questioned things about these laws, rules, and morals. If asked about them, they would have just said, "That's just the way it is." That is life. Laws, rules, and morals are here for everyone's safety and protection. Those miscreants who broke the law, rules, or morals could be prosecuted, put in jail, or shunned or ostracized from the rest of society in the bubble. They would be made to understand that you are to do things as they are done here or suffer the consequences. But one day, one of the bubble people, a young woman who had signed up for a term of service in the military, all unknowing, was taken to a location outside the boundaries of the bubble world. It didn't look all that different, but there was a different feel to this location. It felt dangerous. Somehow, she could feel that the usual laws, rules, and morals didn't apply here. Even the solid-seeming ground under her feet felt unstable somehow. Her superiors, who had put her there, were clearly not operating by the usual laws, rules, and morals. Things went from bad to worse. She saw things she had been told by voices of authority from the bubble world that couldn't and shouldn't exist. Yet there they were, right before her eyes. Each order from one of her superiors placed her in greater and greater danger. This from the very people she would have looked to for protection from such things. Her mind and heart beat like the wings of a frightened bird in a cage as she was ordered from place to place, each more frightening than the last. Okay, I'm going to skip forward a little bit here. It goes into some of the details of what was going on, and you're going to have to read this for yourself. And again, this is just a setup for like the deeper parts of what she's going to get into. But these little stories, I think that they have a powerful impact on the way our mind can allow information in. I think that they're lyrical. And so it kind of activates both sides, both hemispheres of the brain, and then allows us to get into more of the typical nonfiction style of writing. But I like these little poetic moments because it softens the edges of that bubble, the bubble inside of us. And I just wanted to close it out with the kind of the end of this story. For her, the bubble world burst. It was a fiction. There was grief and rage to deal with and terror, but she kept putting one foot in front of the other, her commitment to healing and wholeness keeping her on course. How many of you can relate to that? When she tried to talk to other people in the bubble world, her experiences were so far outside the laws, rules, and morals that everyone accepted were so unthinkable, so unspeakable, many did not believe her. Yet she knew this other reality existed underneath the illusory reality of the bubble world. She did find others who knew the same kinds of things that she knew, but they were a minority. They were regarded by others in the bubble world as conspiracy theorists, spinning out fantastic tales only fit for movies and fiction writing. It was nearly impossible to get anyone to listen, to wake up. What would it take? And then she gives a caution. You are reading a book that will be taking you on a journey far outside of the bubble. After this journey, you might not ever see our world the same way again. So I've already had this experience of that bubble being burst, and you probably have too, but it's persistent and it tries to grow back. And I've noticed that on my own journey of studying the anomalous, there have been so many times where I've had to reburst that bubble. What I mean is that when I first started making this channel, for example, you guys, it's so funny to think about, but I was so terrified. Like, what does it even matter? Who even am I? Who's coming to get me? Why would anyone even care what I think? But I was so scared to talk about these things. It was that same feeling of like this constricting energy in your throat and in your mouth. And sometimes before recording an episode, I would even be shaking. And it's because within me, I'm carrying my own truth that I haven't fully been able to get out, you know? But I'm in the research phase. First I was in the healing phase, and now I'm in the research phase. And one day I'll be in the phase of telling my story, if it matters at that point. I'm kind of hoping, part of me is hoping I don't have to, because I don't know if that's what we all have to do, but we all have our own personal soul path. She figured hers out, and writing her story was part of it. And this is true for so many people. For me, I'm just trying to understand my place in it all. And I don't know if I want to do hypnotic regression for certain phases of my life or certain experiences, because sometimes what you uncover is so traumatic that you actually, then you relive it and your body relives it, and then you have to process and heal from that for months or years after. And I don't know about you, but I don't really have time for that in my life right now. I've already dipped out of reality for a couple years when I needed to just go off grid and like heal and live at home and basically rebuild myself. And I don't really have the time in my life to do that again right now. So part of me thinks, let it lay, like let it be in the darkness, and let me just know what I know, and I keep moving forward, and I don't need to talk about it with everyone, and I don't need to understand every detail of it, because I understand enough to know what I need to do. But another part of me wishes I did have the luxury to do that, but I would want to have a whole like infrastructure set up to catch me on the other side. If I went into that hypnotic regression and was re-traumatized, I need to be able to have time and space. And right now I work a very demanding job, and not everyone that is in my life is into this kind of thing. And I already feel crazy when I post TikToks about practicing psychokinesis or remote viewing, because while I have some friends who totally get it, there are other people who really look down on this. And so it's this weird thing, even though the stigma has dissolved to some extent, and even though, you know, I'm not some high profile figure, I still feel that fear. I still feel that anxiety, because we're all a kind of whistleblower in a way. We're all shining a light on a part of reality that is really scary and really powerful and wants to remain hidden. And so we who have come face to face with the reality of that dangerous aspect, that shadow world, we know what it is and we know how scary it is. And so it feels really vulnerable to poke at that at all. But instead of trying to do like a big gesture, I'm just trying to slowly be like the water carving rock over time, just one little drip at a time of, you know, processing the information and uncovering layer by layer a little bit more. That's why this channel moves at a very mellow pace and is not sensational, because that's my method with all of this, at least for now. Now Oren is snoring, my little baby boys. One is snoring and one is playing. She talks about the erosion of our constitutional rights and how that began during the Bush administration, but we all see what's happening now, and that's still something that is continuing to this day. She talks about chakras and these hidden energy systems that are actually responsible for our wellness or our dis-ease in physical matter reality. She talks about how once she uncovered the memories, she wanted to try to share some of the horror with people she was close to, because that's how we process these things. We talk about it with others, and nobody could understand her because they don't have the framework to understand her. So they were just asking her questions like, oh, are you sure that's what happened? Or maybe you got the memories mixed up. So it's almost like a kind of gaslighting in a way, but they don't even mean to be. But this happens a lot when you're an experiencer, where you're already dealing with so much trauma, and then on top of it, people don't really believe you, and so that creates this very isolating experience that can lead people into deep depression and dysfunction, and sometimes take them to the edge of their life. This is what her experience was, and she said, it seemed to me that I was stuck between the devil and the deep blue sea. All right, that's it for today. I'm Shakti. Thanks for being here with me in my Anomalous study hall. As always, please leave your comments if you have any thoughts about this. If you've heard of Niara or read her book, let me know. And if you haven't, I really hope you'll get a copy, and I'll see you next time on Shocks Talks.